Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all my baggage droppers around the world, welcome to another episode of the Drop Your Baggage podcast with me, your host, Charles Woolfork. This is where we talk to people that are dope, that can give you hope and teach you a technique to help you cope. And today, if you are listening to this podcast right now, please consider hitting the subscribe button if you're on Facebook, YouTube, or any podcast platform. And if you're on a podcast platform, give a brother 5 stars. I'm out here being a blessing out here, and give me some feedback. I'd appreciate it. And if you're on YouTube and Facebook, thumbs up as well. Go ahead and smash that like button, destroy that like button. That's what you can do for us today. Today we are with the incredible Rhett Brewer. Oh my gosh, this guy is fantastic over in the UK. And before we get into how amazing he is, I want to let you guys know that this production is brought to you by Brewer and Company. Brewer and Company is a jewelry boutique that makes durable minimalist jewelry with using genuine pearls, local shells, sea glass, natural gemstones, precious metals, and quality handcrafted designs. Once again, that's Brewer and Company. And if you want to see her outstanding jewelry, you can go to her website at brianneandco.com or on Instagram at Brewer and Company. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you Rhett. Now, Rhett was born in New Jersey. He's been in the UK for a few decades, though. He's there right now. He's been a composer for modern classic music. At 22 years old, that was when he had took his first artistic photo of a venue of called the Royal Albert Hall, and the oldest and biggest dedicated concert hall in central London. And then he was a part of the orchestral project called The Thaw with the Royal Philharmonics. And Prince Charles used the production in a performance in the Royal Albert Hall. How outstanding is that? He's done soundtracks, and then he had to make the decision. Is he going to choose music or is he going to choose business? So he went ahead and decided to have assets over business, got into property and real estate, and now he's currently teaching other people how to do it. And he's writing a book to help inspire other people that are in the arts, have a charity, or entrepreneurs, and have them look at their mindset to refocus their minds on the right mindset that they need to have in order to take big risks, to do big things. Ladies and gentlemen, the book is going to be called Be Your Own Patron: How to Finance Your Dreams. I bring to you Rhett Brewer. What's up, Rhett?
Hey, how's it going, Charles?
Absolutely outstanding. Like I told you, it's 5 o'clock in the morning here. It's 4 o'clock over there, right?
4 in the afternoon, so
Four in
I've
the
got an
afternoon.
advantage.
There's no advantage here on the Drop Your Baggage podcast. Hey, so one of the things that you talked about was one of the things that you talked about was having a mentor and how important a mentor was. Please let us know about your mentor and how important your mentor was.
Absolutely. So, mentorship for me is one of those secret sauce things where nobody told me, way back when. The value of basically not writing the whole book yourself, not reinventing the wheel, follow after someone who's taken the same path before. And then, really a mentor can be many things, but it's finding someone who effectively can fill gaps that might be there, someone who maybe has experience or confidence or content, whatever it is you need, but most importantly, in the area that you need it. And so a mentor can be someone who's an entrepreneur or someone who is an educator. It can be someone who's a mindset coach. There are many different levels. But for me personally, what that's meant is having most recently someone in the property space who has helped my real estate journey in terms of developing a portfolio that can support my creative work and my quality of living. And so that's really been an amazing opportunity to just shadow someone, have someone hold me accountable in terms of what I'm doing, and moving forward towards my goals. And, just having that dialogue with someone who can really influence how quickly I've been able to turn things around.
It seems as though that mentor of yours was very beneficial as far as being a guide to your success that you've had in real estate, but also making sure that you don't make the same mistakes that he or she, is it a guy or a lady?
It's a guy, yeah.
Yes.
It's a guy who actually he's a quite well-known football star in the UK. And you know, as you do when you get to a certain point, you realize, okay, you're not going to be a football player. And when I say football, I mean soccer. You
Yes,
know,
I,
so,
I know that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
he's a soccer player, and you know, he realized, okay, that runway isn't going to go forever, and so he moved into real estate as a way to then finance his life. He's passionate about it, and that's something that I could relate to as well, because you know, really with music. And with many creative people, you have the ups and downs. So you'll have a windfall where you have an amazing moment, you make lots of money if you're lucky, and then there could be nothing, you know, for
Mm,
a period of time. And meanwhile, the bills are constant. And so, you know, for me, that was the riddle. How do you address that? You know, because it's not so straightforward. You know, when you're a creative, but using some of that creativity and applying it to property has allowed me to basically create a passive income stream, which then is a pipeline of money that I'm building up over a relatively short period of time to then support me being able to do whatever I want to do. And if it's an ambitious project, if I wanted to hire the Royal Philharmonic, I could ask them, well, how much? And I could go, for example, flip a property in order to pay the bill without having to wait for the man to come and sign a check. I can be the man. And, you know, it means taking on board education and coaching and understanding how that kind of thing works.
yeah.
But at the same time, as long as I have my outcome very clearly outlined from the beginning, and
Mhm.
as long as I'm consistent with how I you know, focus on that outcome as far as daily actions and you know, being aligned with that goal, then you know, over time that goal materializes.
Amen. Amen. What type of creativity do you use um, with your music, and then you apply it to your ventures in real estate?
Absolutely. Well, I'd say creatives, I think we often underestimate ourselves in terms of thinking that somehow we're not as good as we can be in terms of, let's say, corporate thinking or, you know, Excels and spreadsheets and things, all of which are actually quite creative once you know what you're doing. Um, but when I look at application, it's been very much a thing of saying, if I look at a building and, you know, it might be run down, it might have all sorts of problems in terms of the layout, the configuration. I might see something that someone else might not see.
Hmm.
And it's training my eye to pick up on those things and then go into it with a creative mind. And it becomes a question of textures and colors and you know, combinations of things, and treating it a little bit like an orchestral project, in that, you know, for me it's you know, okay, who's the conductor, who's my project manager, who's the interior designer, you know, what's she done before. It's finding the right solicitors, lawyers in the States, or, you know, finding the right architects. So all of those people, a bit like an orchestra,
Hmm.
you're effectively bringing them together and then trying to move them into place along a trajectory, which is, I'm going from A to B with this project. I've seen how I want that to move.
Hmm.
And then, you know, basically I'm working with that group to create a result. And so it's really the same thing as, let's say, you know, creating a piece of music. It's just that it's, in this case, something that's going to pay me monthly,
Hmm.
you know, through rental income.
The That's fascinating that you have such a vision. As soon as you does it just hit you as soon as you see it, or does it take you a little bit of like maybe a little bit of time, maybe a day or two to be like, oh, I got it. And then you just run with it from there.
Um, it sometimes takes days, it sometimes takes weeks. But I think what happens over time, and that's where having a mentor is so important. It's the practical application. When you practice something,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes second nature. And that's where I'd say, sport as well as the arts kind of actually come together in a very similar way, in that it's repetition of process
Mm-hmm.
and finding a way for you to navigate through that and just make it work for you,
Yeah.
which doesn't have to be prescribed. It doesn't have to be something that is the way that everyone is supposed to do it. It's about how does that work for you.
Mm-hmm. Finally tuning that skill so it just becomes second nature to you, to where it also becomes like intuitive, just like someone may be on the football field, if you will, both proper football and soccer. The
Exactly.
like there's a flow to it, and you can make moves and do things before just by seeing an inkling of what might happen, and then all of a sudden you have yourself a good play, and you're helping out your teammates. It's fascinating. Um, what was your first property, and how did you feel when you were going through the whole process?
The honest truth is, every time I've bought a property, I'm always slightly terrified. So,
Awesome.
because there's your instinct that says, "Yeah, I think this is a good deal."
Hmm.
The terror is in what's underneath, what's really
Hmm.
going on, and you don't
Hmm.
know fully until you know, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you get better at knowing.
Hmm.
So, an example of that is when I first got this place, which is kind of my home, my studio. So I have all that here. But when I first bought it, there was this horrific kitchen platform, and no one knew what was under the platform. Okay. So I bought this place thinking, is there a dead body down there? Is there some sort of horrible waste pipe down there? What's underneath the kitchen? And nobody knew what was under the kitchen. So literally, I move in, and the day that I had the keys, the first thing I did was to get a saw and to cut a hole in this platform so I could see what was under the kitchen. And under the kitchen was actually almost nothing. So, you start realizing that luckily with Victorian houses like these, there's a logic to how people have tended to treat them. And once you become familiar and comfortable with the logic of what people have done, why they've done it, and how they've done it, it reassures you in terms of, let's say, those risk factors. So that's one example. Another was when I bought my biggest rental development house. So, it's one of those things where I thought, yeah, great idea, great investment. And it was only when the owner handed me the keys, and I'm, standing outside this 4-story building with a set of keys, which was, just ridiculous. There were like about 30 keys on this key ring. And he explained to me, okay, this is how the boiler works. This is how the heating works. And then he says, okay, take care. Bye bye. And I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Like, was this a mistake? Is this the worst thing that I've ever done? Am I going to die in this house? I mean, it's just literally all the mortal fears come up around, the what ifs. And then when you get used to the what ifs, you realize that 99.9% of them are irrational. Some degree of it has to be faith, and some degree of it when you get into property development or doing anything, whether it's music or anything that takes money, is understanding that money usually fixes most problems. And so if you then kind of move through that and you say, well, as long as I'm confident that either I have the funds or I can find the funds from someone else, then it makes it a lot less terrifying, because you know that there's ultimately a solution to the problem, which is money.
Yeah, yeah. So the lesson is like that I hear with you is to overcome the fears and an investment is an investment, and you're gonna need money for it. So whatever is wrong with it, you just gotta spend the money to make sure that you do what you need to do to fix it.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. But now you didn't start your career, of course, or you didn't start your life, of course, as a property owner. You started in music, and you were young when you had major success. Well, no, you were young when you started envisioning things, but you had major success when you started with the Thaw. Can you Can you tell us or tell them the stories of the Thaw like you told me?
Yeah, sure. So the thaw, you know, I find it a really beautiful story just to
Hmm.
share, because if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would I have been able to do something like the thaw? I probably would have said no,
Mm,
because it was very ambitious, it was terrifying, and I'd never done it before. Okay. So the way all this really started was that a friend of mine, we had a drink. We were talking about doing a creative project. He's a film director. Another friend of his was an ice sculptor. And so we were talking about what could we do together in some sort of creative way. So just as you do in the UK, we started talking in the pub. Okay.
mm-hmm.
So this pub talk then led to us thinking, well, what can we do with this idea of combining film, ice sculpture, and music? And I said, wouldn't it be amazing to work with an orchestra? And my friend Lucas, being the bold, fearless person that he is, decided to contact a Finnish orchestra, who then turned around and said, okay, we'll let you use the equivalent of the second largest orchestra in the country, the equivalent of the Royal Festival Hall in London for up to 2 weeks. They covered our flights, our food, and other elements of this. And so, from never having done it before, I then had a ticking clock, which was a year to write this music,
Mm.
and it was going to be premiered first on a live stage. And then after that, they also agreed to record it with me in their amazing facilities. It's the largest modern concert hall in Scandinavia. So it's, spectacular sound. And so, all of this came through doing what? Asking. So, we asked, they said yes. And then I had to deliver. So that was the background of it.
Mm-hmm.
With that concert, it went very well. And we managed to then record all of this. And then I managed to get back to the UK, and I managed to do this thing where I thought, wow, great. Except now what do I do? And, I financially put myself really on the line in order to enable all of this to happen. And so this is one of the challenges of the arts, like on the one hand, I had this amazing gift. On the other hand, I had this big challenge. So in the end, I managed to navigate the challenge, started recording the album, The Thaw. And then along came this guy, David, who said, this would be perfect for a large event a friend of mine is doing. And I thought to myself, when you say large event, what kind of event? And he said, well, it's a royal charity. It's a very large event. And I didn't quite believe him. So I thought, oh, right. He's pulling my leg. I've heard it a million times. Lots of people brag about all sorts of things. Lo and behold, I'm invited to this meeting with this lovely woman, Gail, from the charity, who then I still didn't believe. She had knee-length purple hair. And I'm thinking, what does she have to do with, first of all, Prince Charles and the royal household? And second of all, how realistic is this? Except that then we started having meetings, first at Clarence House, which is his residence, and then at the Royal Albert Hall. And then it all became very real. So the big challenge was the only way logistically to do this, because how how busy the venue itself is. It's one of the busiest in the world. There's
Mm.
literally a new concert being moved in on the day and then moved out in the evening.
Oh my
Was
God.
for us to then, from 5 a.m. in the morning, start setting up the production on the stage, including an entire stage full of sculpted ice, which had to be specially engineered to get it into the building. So we had to measure all of the hallway lengths and spaces and look at the height of the elevators. I mean, it was literally a logistical feat. And it happened to be in July. So peak summer season where it's boiling traditionally in London and where we have what? Ice, which has to be on stage, assembled, and then last until the evening.
Mm.
So we had to create a special refrigeration system around the ice, with dry ice and all sorts of covers and filters and things. And this is all on top of the fact that then the first ever rehearsal that I had with the Royal Philharmonic was on the morning of the concert. Okay. So the pressure, as you can imagine, was immense. Another great story that happened that day was anyone who knows music, live performances, usually have one mixing desk, which is for, let's say, the engineer. There's another mixing desk, which is for the artist. And that desk decided to blow up about an hour before the performance. The guests are arriving, you know, you've got major logistics happening. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, now here's a great side story to this is that for years I'd done little performances in pubs and all sorts of places, very, very humble. Sometimes I'd have to carry my gear onto the stage myself.
Mm-hmm.
So what I didn't know at that time was all of that was training for this exact moment, because here I am in this massive arena, barely able to hear myself because I'm hearing what the audience is hearing, but I'm not hearing what I'm doing on the stage. So it sounded to me like I was doing karaoke to myself, but I had absolute trust and faith that I had the perfect engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I know the orchestra is doing what they need to do. And all I had to do was be precise in, what I was delivering at the time in order to just make sure that it was okay. And ironically, I think it helped the performance because it added a certain level of intensity. I didn't have time to be nervous because it was literally like, I'm getting, the 3, 2, 1 music starts and, production launches. We've had one rehearsal. Here we go. And, here's Prince Charles sitting, at the front of the stage. So, I think what's the moral of the story? Moral of the story is that everything you do prepares you for everything else that you can do. Second moral of the story is that when things go wrong, actually that's an invitation to rise to your highest self. Mm-hmm. And number 3, just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean that you don't have permission to do it. It's about giving yourself permission to do it and, just believing that it's possible, even if, let's say, society, baggage suggests that you don't have what it takes.
Mm. Fascinating, man. Fascinating. Like just the pressure of it all, the crazy circumstances, the unforeseen issues that showed up, and for you to just make it through all of that and then make it out on top to where everyone loves it, to where you look like the professional, the amazing artist that you are. Man, I'm so impressed, man. Congratulations on all of that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. And wanted to get right, like, back into you being property owner and also you're wanting to inspire others as well. Let's talk about your book, Be Your Own Patron. You know, you say you're currently writing a book to help inspire other people that are in the arts like yourself, but also that have a charity or just entrepreneurs, and like take a look at their mindset and to shift their mindset so they can have a more productive and like necessarily the right mindset. Can you talk more about the book that you're writing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book came about really because I realized that I was on a couple of clubhouse rooms, just listening to people. And then I was invited to speak at one point about, the arts and property, and I found it just a really interesting subject. And what I came to understand in just that moment of being present with the whole issue is that actually a lot of people struggle with this idea of how do I go from A to Z?
Yeah.
Because maybe they didn't get the script, maybe their family of origin didn't tell them what they needed to know in order to maybe exceed at or create the things that they really want in their lives. And so I started realizing that, I was there too. And I'm still there all the time because I'm making this shit up. Excuse my French, but constantly I'm making it up. Okay.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so, but there's an anecdote that I like to share, which is about a film called Australia. So I went to see this film a number of years ago, and it's by a director named Baz Luhrmann, which a lot of people will know. He's been very successful. But the reason I bring this story up is because he managed to persuade people to give him 100 million Australian dollars to make this film, which was the most anyone had ever received to make a feature film in Australia. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, how on earth did he persuade anyone to sign that check? Imagine just seeing a transfer from someone's bank going into your bank account that says 100 million. So at the time I was thinking to myself, well, okay, surely he must have said something special, right? And what I realized more recently through coaching and through my own experiences is that really all business and arts are a business, So, really all business starts with a conversation, understanding the other side's needs and what they are looking for. And then once I'm able to meet that person's needs, no matter how many zeros are attached to that request, they are almost obliged to say yes if I've met their needs. And once I understood that, it became easy to understand how he was able to do that. So he would have probably said something like, well, I have Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe attached. Whether he had them or not is a whole other story. Maybe he thought, I'll talk to them after. Who knows?
Yeah.
He probably would have said we're aiming for, the biggest ever production in Australian history. Most importantly, on my last film, the budget was X, and I made X profit for the production company. And so I'm anticipating on this film of making, let's say, 150 to 200 million in terms of, let's say, overall numbers. And so that means I would have doubled your investment, right? So where did I get this stuff? This isn't from me. This is from me shadowing and watching other people. And then borrowing basic thinking that is really, an opportunity for everyone to do the same thing. So how am I doing property? The truth is I'm not doing property with my own money. I'm borrowing money from investors and I'm giving them a very good return. And so, whether I'm borrowing 100,000 or 500,000, as long as it's a very good return, and as long as they can vet that I know what I'm doing, it then becomes something that is attractive to the right person. And
Mm-hmm.
so that same thinking is something I've carried into property. It's also something that can be carried into getting that first orchestra to say yes,
Mm-hmm.
which is really, what am I doing? What's the vision and what's the impact? And, how can I help? What's your problem and how can I help?
Mm. Wow, I am so excited for that book. I'm definitely gonna buy a copy, and I would love for you to sign it. And I'll pay for shipping and bring it over here. But that's exciting to get a hold of, just to learn those basic principles of business and looking through it through the eyes of such an amazing storyteller and a person that has so much experience with it as well. I'm excited to just get my hands on it and start digging into it right away. Now, here on the Drop Your Baggage podcast, we actually drop baggage. We talk to people that are dope, that can give you hope and teach you a technique that can help you cope. And that technique is called mental and emotional release. It is an NLP technique. Now, for anyone that would like to do mental and emotional release, please, that's three pleases right there. Please consider going to a certified practitioner of neuro linguistic programming. And I am a certified trainer of neuro linguistic programming. I've been to this the third level. If you want to learn more about mental and emotional release, go to charleswoolfork.com and just click on the MER tag. The MER stands for mental and emotional release. Or you can go to eliminatinginsecuritiesnow.com. Once again, that's eliminatinginsecuritiesnow.com. And I have a case study on mental and emotional release as well, and a lot more amazing information on how to do it on your own. And just for your own good, Rhett, I want to let you know that I'm not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, or a therapist or a counselor of any sort, and that I'm just an alternative to working in the mental health space, if you will. So I say that for my lawyers. And now you chose to get rid of the fear of not being good enough. Why did you choose that fear?
I think because it's one that has plagued me a lot throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that I struggle with sometimes. Obviously, not all the time, because things do happen that remind me that it's not true. However, it's there, like a root,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's also one where hopefully I can, be of service to other people by them, experiencing that and maybe relating to, what we do together.
Amen. What's the one experience or what's one trigger where you feel or you get that thought of I'm not good enough and it like makes you hesitate for a second before actually taking action?
I'd say rejection is one of them, where rejection or disempowerment. So rejection would be if I've let's say written to 10 orchestras and they all say no. Then the assumption could be that okay, I'm not good enough, and that's why they've said no.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've gone to 2 or 10 potential investors and they've all said, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that little voice comes in and says, maybe it's because you're really not good enough,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to remembering all the evidence of when I have been good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
there's facts, things have gone well. Generally everything goes well for me in the
Mm-hmm.
bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are some examples.
Yeah, for sure. Those are good ones too. Um, Throughout the exercise, so I'll go ahead and give you an overview again. You only need to do three things: use your imagination, follow directions, and trust the process. You said that your past was to your left, or your left, and my right. You're right. It's not two lefts. Anyway, and the most important thing about this whole process is that you replaced your negative thought patterns with positive thought patterns, and to go over each and every event, you observe each and every event that I asked you to observe, and to really see everyone in the event from a human aspect, from a like on a spirit, on a human and spirit level, to where I will repeat these mantras and these different principles to you, and you can apply them to where it's needed, so you can release that feeling or that thought pattern of I'm not good enough. And between you and me, I'll edit this part out. Take your time. Remember, we've marked out 2 hours. We've only been in this for 45 minutes. Take your time, do what you need to do in order to heal. This is time for you, and I am here for you. So, and I've been on lines with people for 3-4 hours at one time. So please do what you need to do to go ahead and get rid of, or to change your consciousness around this negative, or this limiting belief. And also, yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be changing your consciousness around this limiting belief, so you can see it through a lens or a filter of compassion and empathy and forgiveness and acceptance for yourself and others. Cool.
Cool.
All right. Awesome, man. Um, let's get into it. Is it all right with your unconscious mind for you to release this limiting belief of I'm not good enough today, and for you to be aware of it consciously?
Yes.
Awesome. What is the root cause of this problem? The first event which, when disconnected, that will cause this problem to disappear. If you were to know, when was the first time that you felt as though I'm not good enough? When you were a little bitty kid?
I think would have been at school and being bullied, and the backdrop of race in America, I'd say at the time, 70s. We think things are difficult now, but they were more difficult then. They were more difficult for our parents and grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's that backdrop.
Understood. Do you have a specific event in mind that you think about with that?
Probably the beginning of high school. I moved from quite a rough and ready town when I was about 13,
Mm-hmm.
to a relatively affluent white town around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite a traumatic experience because I
Mm-hmm.
went from being in a very Black environment, which had lots of problems, but where I didn't have certain things to confront. And, one of them was race in America at the time. And all of a sudden I was thrown into this school environment where there was a lot of psychological violence. There was a lot of torture, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so, going from one to the other was quite jarring.
Mm-hmm.
And on a practical level, I went from being the valedictorian of my junior high school to then being in this new high school taking PSAT at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And I think I got something like 800 out of 1600 at the
Wow.
time,
Wow.
which taught me a lot about how education in America works. Because
Mm-hmm.
years later, obviously, I did a lot better than that, and it was because of my environment and being around people who basically were, just in a different, it's a different world,
Yeah.
and so it taught me a lot about empathy and compassion for both sides, because I've been in both places.
That's major right there. Um, can you go any farther back before 13 years old, to where you maybe felt as though you're not good enough, like in that environment that you were in New Jersey, with the schools that you went to, with your parents or anything? Can you, because the younger you talked about root, and what we're trying to get is the root of this limiting belief from the very beginning. So it's just like a weed, if you will. If you don't pull it out by the root, then it's just going to keep coming back. And that one thought pattern, that one event that you think about again, or that you can that your mind can refer to again with the same trigger, can then make you have that type of relapse of thinking that old negative thought pattern?
Well, if we wind all the way back, pre-internet, pre-cell phones, there really was a world.
Yeah, was it?
There really was a world, and pre-Zoom, right? And back then, the media, and I'm talking television, I'm
Mm,
talking. So as a child, I grew up basically soaking up a lot of uh, assumptions that were being portrayed in advertising, in TV shows, in films, that basically reinforced this idea that somehow someone like me was less than because of the way that I looked and my race.
mhm,
And it was skin and, let's say products that people were using. You'd have conditioners that were advertised, and then obviously they weren't made for black hair. And so magically when you use them it didn't produce the same results. And so there were lots of negative reinforcing moments throughout my childhood. And on the flip side, we didn't have a lot of the amazing role models that we have today. So,
mhm,
all these people who we take for granted now, like an Oprah Winfrey or a lot of the film stars, music stars, people who are not just entertainers, but they own stuff,
mhm,
right? They've gone into the hundreds of millions and the billion mark.
mhm.
Um, that stuff didn't exist so readily to a child like me at that time. So I think that's where it started, and
Boom.
I could say five, six.
That's the one. That's the one right there. Thank you so much for digging a little deeper. That's very important for yourself. And of course, no worries, we'll be able to revisit that time when you were 13. But to start at the root is the most important thing that we need to do. All right. So now let's go ahead and get into it. You can go ahead and close your eyes and relax and let me know when you're ready for the process to drop your baggage.
Okay.
Awesome. Now, just imagine floating up above your timeline and float deeper and deeper and deeper into the past above that first event in which you felt as though I'm not good enough when you were just a little kid, about 5, 6 years old, and hover above that little kid. Be the observer of that whole event. Let me know when you can see that little kid.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now just stay right there, being the observer of the event, watching that little kid. Now, just ask your unconscious mind what it needs to learn from the event, the learning of which will allow you to let go of the emotions easily and effortlessly. Your unconscious mind can preserve the learnings so that if you need them in the future, they'll be there. Just tell your unconscious mind to preserve the learnings. What is something positive and empowering you can tell that little boy and everyone else involved in the event with the consciousness that you have today that will allow the emotions to evaporate like water on the concrete on a hot summer day? And as you preserve these learnings, the emotions are starting to dissipate more and more until they're all gone. Just let me know when they're all gone.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Now, just imagine. Oh, wait a second. First of all, with your eyes closed and with you sitting above, or with you being above that little boy right now, tell me, what is something that you learned from the event?
I'd say that number one, that little boy had more than enough at the time and always did. That little boy was actually special
Mm,
and very gifted.
awesome. What is something that you can take from that event and carry forward with you into the future?
I've always been enough. I've always been good enough.
That's right. That's right. Now, just imagine floating up above your timeline and float deeper and deeper and deeper into the past, above the dinosaurs during the prehistoric age. Let me know when you're above the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you're above the dinosaurs, float deeper and deeper into space to where space and the atmosphere connects. And imagine your timeline is the size of a fingernail. Let me know when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you float there, weightless, just imagine floating right there, weightless, in space. And ask yourself now, where are the emotions? Tell me, are they there or have they disappeared? Now,
Can't see them anymore.
awesome. Now, just imagine floating down inside the event, seeing through your own eyes as a little boy and check on the emotions. Tell me, are they there or have they disappeared? Now,
They've disappeared.
awesome. Float back above the dinosaurs and then float into space to where space and the atmosphere connects. Let me know when you're there.
I'm there.
All right, listen closely, very closely. Float very, very high above your timeline, above each and every event in which you felt as though I'm not good enough, from birth until now in chronological order. Don't skip one event that has a charge on it. Preserve the learnings and let go of that limiting belief all the way back to now. Go. Welcome back. How was that?
It's very powerful.
Very efficient, yeah.
Very efficient.
Awesome, man. Let's go ahead and I'm going to do a test to see what's your mindset now. Do you smell bacon?
No.
Yeah, it's an NLP technique as well to help
Right.
you change your state. Can you remember a time in the past in which you used to feel that old emotion? And go back and notice if you can feel it, or you may find that you cannot. Or to rephrase, can you remember a time in the past in which you used to think that limiting belief? And see if you can go back to that limiting belief, or you may find that you cannot.
No, can't.
Mm, hmm. I want you to imagine going out into the future, an unspecified time in the future, in which if the same thing would have happened in the past, you would have felt as though I'm not good enough. But it's the future now. So see if you can find that old limiting belief, or you may find that you cannot.
No.
Congratulations. You just released a limiting belief.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. For the people that haven't discovered how this feels as of yet, please describe what you just went through.
Mm. It's a very intense feeling of going through a lot of memories very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, a spaciousness, distance away from maybe the drama of the individual situations, and then feeling intuitively the bigger picture, I
Hmm.
suppose. And seeing the themes, the threads, where it's come from, and then seeing it along a line.
Hmm.
Um, and most importantly, getting to a certain point where I could really see that it just isn't true.
Yeah. And that's where that consciousness shifts happen when you're like, oh, this isn't true at all. And the